I welcome the opportunity to debate the carbon budgets in the chamber today. I suppose I'm always quite torn when it comes to these kind of debates, because I do understand the commitment, particularly that parties like the Green Party have had over many years on climate and environmental issues, and the role that you've taken in the current government in pushing for and driving many of the changes that we do need to see. But I'm also torn because, as a parliamentarian, as a scientist and as a mother, you're right, Deputy Ledden, I do want you to see you do more. And I want to see it happening faster, quicker, and in a fairer way. So, when you ask the question about what would we do, we're saying do more, make it happen faster. What would we do? It's not about my party. We've outlined what our policies are. We've stated it, and we have them down on paper. It's not about that. It's about what the Green Party said they would do. You said you want us to speak in numbers, so I'll give you one number that I think is a key number here tonight, and that's 7%. And during the negotiations with the government, apparently a red line was a 7% per annum reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and that was a green line from the Green Party. In 17 questions that were posed by the Green Party to both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, the first question was, will you commit to an average annual reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of at least 7%. Apparently this was a red line for the party. And it worked, because you got it into the programme for government. The programme government said, we are committed to an average 7% per annum reduction in overall greenhouse gas emissions. It was reiterated 4 times in the space of 2 pages, 7% reduction average. And yet, when we get the carbon budgets, when we get to scrutinise them, it turns out that it's not 7%. It's actually 5.7%. That's another. So and you're right, we did hear from some very eminent people in relation to the discussions we had in the Climate Committee. And you're correct, the Climate Change Advisory Council have very highly qualified and passionate people on it. We had very highly qualified and passionate scientists in. One of those scientists, Professor Barry McMullen, said, the current programme for government committed explicitly to an average reduction in total emissions of 7% per year over the period 2021 to 2030. And yet, he said that the current carbon budgets amount to an annual reduction of just under 6% per year. And it wasn't just Professor Barry McMullen and the other scientists that were in with us, but actually the Climate Change Advisory Council themselves said it. Okay, so they stated in response to the committee that in the scenarios considered by the committee, the average rate of emissions reductions over the 10-year period covering the first 2 carbon budgets is approximately 5.7% per annum. So this isn't something I'm saying, it's not something the independent scientists are saying, it's not something that the different ENGOs are saying. This is the Climate Change Advisory Council said that they weren't meeting the 5.7%, or sorry, the 7%. And so we can talk about what other parties can do, but I mean, ultimately you're in the government, and ultimately the 7% was written in the programme for government. It was a key commitment, it was a red line issue. And yet, unfortunately, the carbon budgets aren't going to actually meet that promise. The Climate Change Advisory Committee, were they wrong in saying that? Did they get their facts wrong? Did they get that number wrong? It's not 5.7%? I'm happy for Deputy Ledden to respond.
Yeah. That's an interpretation that we don't agree with. We wrote the programme for government.
But it's not an interpretation, it's a fact. That's what the Climate Change Advisory Council said.
That's their interpretation.
Okay. Okay, so the organisation that deals in science, which is what you said at the start of your speech, they're now interpreting. So, look, I mean, this is what the budgetary process has come out with. Okay, and we had these discussions during the debate in the Climate Committee, and it was something that I and other members repeatedly raised, the concerns about this. And unfortunately, it wasn't taken on board. When we talk about what I think we also need to do is we can have all these plans. So we can have the carbon budgets, we can have the climate action plan, we can have the Act, but it's about implementation. And that's the most important thing. Often there is too much rhetoric, there's too many plans, and not enough movement, not enough action. So when we look at the key things that the government will be doing, and again, I absolutely hope, I think, you know, we all need for the government to get this right, because I don't want in 3 years' time, when we're facing into another election, to realise that the targets aren't being met, that the implementation isn't there. Because at that stage, we won't have time to ramp up to get it done properly. So I honestly and truly want this to happen and to get it right. But when we look at the wind energy sector is saying that we're not on target to meet the 2030 targets. Retrofitting, I think that's going to be an incredible challenge. And I also think how it's been rolled out is not reflective of a just transition. I think there is going to be a huge amount of our communities who will not be able to afford to retrofit their homes. I think we're relying on wealthier individuals who are in a position to either fund it themselves or to take out the loans. I think the majority of people are so stressed at the moment, Minister, about feeding their children, getting them into their school uniforms, paying their mortgage or their rent, you know, paying for their food, paying for fuel. They will not be able to think about taking another loan out on top of that to make their home warm and comfortable, regardless of how, from a climate perspective, we need people to do it. Or, you know, like it makes sense that people would want their home warm and comfortable, but they won't be in a position to do it. And I think that's a big gap with the retrofitting programme, that you are forgetting about those people, those low and middle income earners who will be in the middle, who will not be able to afford this. When we talk about transport, we need to move people, not into EVs, but into public transport. And yet I haven't seen on the ground, I haven't seen in my constituency any improvements. I haven't seen the type of transformational change we need in the areas of transport. The Connecting Ireland plan, which is, its whole purpose is to bring public transport to rural Ireland, which is, you know, where we really need to expand it. They got 5 million this year. 5 million. It's a paltry amount of money. So, you know, there needs to be an absolute, this needs to be transformational. We need to put everything into it, and we need to do it quickly. I do also want to talk about the whole element of consultation, because Minister, in your speech, you say that there was consultation from the committee, there was consultation from the public, and then obviously the input from the Climate Change Advisory Committee. But we need to start moving beyond a sort of tick-the-box consultation, because I'd be interested in knowing were any changes made as a result of the public consultation? How many people put into it? They haven't been published yet. There's no indication of the number of people who submitted submissions on it, or where and if it had been taken into account. I don't think there was any changes as a result of the recommendations. I think there was 36 recommendations of the the Joint Oireachtas Committee. And as you said, Deputy Ledden, we worked very long and hard and passionately to bring forward those 36 and get agreement on those 36 recommendations. So I'd be interested to know, were they taken into account? Where the consultation, where is the public consultation? Will you be actually publishing that? Will people be able to see where their input was heard? Because I think that's really important. If we want people to engage in this process and to bring communities along, like you're saying, we need to make sure that when they do participate, that it means something.
Thank you, Deputy.
And I would actually ask the Minister to come back to me with some details of what happened.